Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about passive voice and active voice. These are two things that you hear used together a lot, passive voice and active voice, but really they are two entirely opposite things. Active voice is the opposite of passive voice, and passive voice is the opposite of active voice. But what they have in common is these are two different ways that we can use verbs in a sentence. Okay, so to really understand what passive voice and active voice are, you need to understand what verbs are. If you have not already grasped that essential knowledge, let me try to give you a quick rundown, and you can come talk to me if you still need help. A verb is a word in a sentence that gives an action. It tells you what is happening in the sentence. Now, for there to be an action in a sentence, that also means that there has to be somebody doing that thing. Even if what is being done is very mundane, there is still something, a person, a inanimate object, a concept of nature that is doing that thing. Okay, so with active voice and passive voice, what's happening is we are messing around with the order of who is doing it and what was done. In active voice, which is something that we use 90% of the time, we say who did something and then we say what they did. So I'm going to illustrate this with red and blue here. So red will be the person doing something, and blue will be that thing that they did. So if we had a very simple sentence like Jimmy threw the basketball, here we have Jimmy in red because he's the person doing something, threw in blue because that's what he's doing in this sentence, and then the basketball is just the rest of the sentence. Okay, so this is an active voice. We have the person doing something and then what they did. So I told you that passive voice is the exact opposite of active. So what do you think is going to happen to the order of these two things? I bet you guessed it. We are going to flip them. We're going to switch them around 100%. So we're just going to say what was done and then who did it. So the ball was thrown by Jimmy. This is now in passive voice because the thing that's being done, throwing, is coming before the person who's doing it, Jimmy. We can do other examples like this too. We can say Mike ate the pizza in active voice. Mike comes first and then what he did, which was eating. And we can do it in passive voice, which would then be the pizza was eaten by Mike. Every single verb in the English language can be written in either active voice or passive voice. You don't have to worry so much about when is the right time to use which tense, which voice here. What I want you to focus on right now is learning to spot the differences between them. So let's talk about some differences beyond just the first one, which was the person doing it comes first in passive voice, in active voice rather, whereas in passive voice they come afterwards. Another difference, an easy way to spot if something is in passive voice, is to look to see if the person doing something just isn't there. You can say the ball was thrown or the pizza was eaten, and depending on the context, the sentence will still make sense. But the person who's doing the throwing, the person who's doing the eating, is not present in our sentence. This is something that passive voice can be useful for, but it's also a quick way to look to see if something is in passive voice. Check to see if the person is present at all. Another way that you can check for passive voice is to look for the word is or was or any variation between those two before your verb. So let's continue with our previous examples of throwing and eating. right? No matter how you conjugate the verbs throw and eat, if you see a version of the word is in front of it, then that means that verb is in passive voice. We don't always think of the word is being a verb that has different tenses, but it does. It depends on when you did it, how many people were there doing it. So you could have is if it's happening in the present, was if it happened yesterday, were if it happened yesterday and multiple people were doing it, right? So no matter how you write throw and eat, if it has the word is, was, or were in front of it, it's going to be in passive voice. So he is eating, he was eating, they were eating. He is throwing, they were throwing, and he was throwing. All of those verbs are in passive voice.